Well, good morning and welcome to the IBPSA Committee Recruitment Party. You may have seen multiple titles for this event as we try to figure out the best way to tell people how to get involved in IBPSA, how to figure out your best options for building on your career, networking, helping build the industry as a whole, and of course, figure out the best way where you can get the benefit of your relationship with IBPSA. So today we're going to walk you through brief descriptions of all the various committees and opportunities that we have. And each of the people that are going to be leading this will provide information, connections, et cetera, et cetera. So today's agenda is very short. We're going to do some introductions, talked about all the different committees that we're going to be looking at today, of the opportunities for you guys to participate, and give you all an opportunity to ask some questions. The way we'd like to do that, because there are many people in the room and these are sort of ongoing conversations, you will get a couple of different ways. One is use the chat. So if you've got a question, just drop it into the chat and we'll get back to you either toward the end of today's session where we'll do Q&A. Additionally, most every speaker has slides and URLs. We'll drop those URLs in the chat so that you can contact them, fill out any registration forms, and or ask questions directly of someone from the committee. So don't worry, you've got lots of opportunity to ask questions, get the information you need. And of course, we'll be following up with all of that information by email to anyone that registered for this event. Let's jump to the next slide. This is to show you just where the chat might be. I have to, one qualifier here is, you never know with Zoom. Sometimes it pops up behind some little dots and so forth and so on, but I'm sure that if you click around enough, you'll be able to find the chat today. So today we're going to be talking to the various people that we're speaking. We'll start off with communications with Ben Brandon. Ben, why don't you raise your hand? There you go. Chapters will be covered by Matthew Duffy. Education, Eric Kolderup. Two hands and very close to the screen. Thank you. Research, Nathaniel Jones.
Hello.
Hey, Nathaniel. Building Data Exchange, Saga Rao. California Advocacy Committee with Greg Collins.
Hello.
Certification Committee, Dimitri Contianas.
Hey.
And finally, Conferences Committee, Supriya Goel. You can see the QR code here. This should take you to the page that lists all of our committees and a few other program events, et cetera, et cetera. So let's get started with Ben Brandon and the Communications Committee.
Thanks, Mike. You can go ahead to the next slide. So as Mike said, I'm Ben Brandon. I'm the chair of this committee. Here's just a quick breakdown. We've got Drew as our vice chair and board liaison. We work pretty closely with Mike and other IBPSA staff for the various parts that we work on. And you can see a list of our growing membership right here. So this committee, next slide, please, Mike, is actually one of the newest, maybe even the newest committee. I'm not sure exactly. It was formed at the very end of last year. Some of these tasks previously were done on sort of an ad hoc as needed basis. And so this committee was formed to take certain tasks, so especially things like the website, newsletter, and email, and kind of direct and implement them in a regular and organized way. We're also responsible for the various marketing and social media presences of IBPSA-USA. We'll help with coordinating various publications with conferences and then coordinate and help out local chapters as needed. So the next slide, this is the summary of what we're working on right now. Did you go to the next one, Mike? It's not changing on my screen. Thank you. There we go. So as of right now, these are the things that are on our to-do list. As I said, this is a brand new committee, so we're still kind of getting into the swing of things. Everything marked with an asterisk is what we are working on at the moment. The main task was updating the website, and as you can imagine, that is there's a lot of work involved in that, which actually goes through not just on what you see on the website, but will impact newsletters, email lists, calendars, and other sorts of communication, and then sort of grouping together multiple websites that you might not realize that we own and manage. So at the moment, that is actually we're meeting about weekly. That's quite a bit more frequently than we will in the future. So anyone who's interested in being involved, just know that right now and whenever we have sort of a major task, we'll kind of have a burst of several meetings and to get the work done. But as things go along and progress, we'll probably be on the order of meeting every 1 to 2 months to sort of maintain everything else with the chapters, social media, and various marketing events. Okay.
Thanks, Ben. Next, Chapters Committee.
Thank you, Mike. Chapters Committee, our email address is chapters@IBPSA-USA. Mike, could you please proceed to the next slide? And I just want to thank everyone for joining today. Also, I am Matthew Duffy. I am the chair of the Chapters Committee, and this is also a newly formed chapter. Towards the end of 2020, we formed this. Mike, you proceed to the next slide. And the mission with this Chapters Committee, after hearing some input from our IBPSA-USA members, we really wanted to have this committee kind of as a beacon and a connecting element with IBPSA-USA and the local chapters. So our mission is to establish, sustain, and support these IBPSA-USA chapters, assist these chapters in whatever needs that they might have, sharing ideas, resources, best practices, perhaps helping them with emails, membership, and different ideas for success, and connect these chapter leaders to IBPSA-USA or national and other chapter leaders, help start new chapters, and hosting different events for multiple chapters. Mike, can you proceed, please? Okay, so our committee currently meets one time a month, maybe twice a month towards the beginning, so we can establish ourselves with the local chapters. And we're looking for more members with our chapters committee to help with other event ideas, perhaps inter-chapter events. Some people had the idea of having like a battle of the chapters to, connect multiple chapters in a different event. Perhaps have a chapter leaders retreat, help with guidelines development, new chapter startups, other event ideas. So the time commitment for this committee is approximately 2 hours per month. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Moving on to the Education Committee with Eric Calderup. Eric?
Yeah, hi, everybody. So our email address, can you back up just one sec? Sorry, Mike. Yeah, so our email address is there, education@ibipsa.us, where you can get information. And then that URL there, which is also in the QR code, will take you to a form where you can, put in your email address and query or let us know that you're interested in potentially participating. Okay, thanks, Mike. Next slide. So we've got a pretty broad scope. I mean, basically 2 elements, workforce development and then supporting market development. I think the workforce development is probably fairly obvious. Help to educate educate energy modelers, and the supporting market development might reach out farther, perhaps, educating the consumers of energy modeling or our clients to help build a better market. And there you can see a list of the people who've been involved recently. Maybe you'll be interested in joining them. Next slide. So a little bit on our history, just a quick rundown of some projects that have happened in the past. Some of you may have heard of the Bambuk Wiki, which was, started probably over 10 years ago. And it's a fairly dormant project, but you might check that out. It's something that is maybe coming to life in a different form that we'll talk about later. Next slide, please. The BEM library, where the wiki was sort of envisioned as a crowdsourced resource. The BEM library was then envisioned as kind of a curated selection of topics. And this is also a fairly dormant project. Sorry to say that was put together by the Rocky Mountain Institute, but you can check that out there at that URL as well. Next, please. We've also developed a training session. So this is a full day, 6-hour training on best practices and applications that was developed originally about 10 years ago. It's been presented dozens of times, most often together with ASHRAE through the ASHRAE Learning Institute. So some of you may have taken this or seen this. It's still active, but it's due for an update. So that's something people could get involved in if they're interested in. Next, please. So the video site, Education on Demand, you may have also seen, is on the IBPSA-USA website. Most of the videos there are recordings of webinars like chapter meetings, but also a bunch of conference presentations from past conferences. But in addition, there are some recorded videos that the Education Committee developed on various fundamental aspects. So that's something that we could also develop further with more volunteer input. Next, please. And then webinars, hopefully you've seen over the last year or so, there have been some Education Committee webinars. And then next, please. Then we've also done a few surveys. So last year we surveyed members on training priorities. This is just a example graph of topics and how people rank them in terms of education priorities. So that's something we'd like to do, on an ongoing basis, understand what members want in terms of education. And next, please. So I think Jati's on the line with us. This is the very new and kind of exciting effort. Jati, do you want to take a minute to talk about this?
Sure. Hello, everyone.
Oh, you're a little bit soft. Can you get more volume somehow?
Okay. Is it fine now?
Ideally a little louder.
Right. Better?
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So hello, everyone. My name is Jaiti Chopra, and I'm the Student and Emerging Professional Director for IBPSA-USA, and I'm here to represent the Emerging Professional Subcommittee of Education Committee. Now, this is a new group which is in the process of formation, and it is for all the students and the professionals who have experienced less than 5 years. It's not based on age, and it's basically there to represent the people who have been who are new to this group, and we are thinking of providing some great networking opportunities and provide some career development. So anyone who is interested in participating in this group can contact the Education Committee.
Thank you very much. So I think that's an exciting development. Next slide, please. So this is the last slide here. All sorts of things we could potentially get involved in. We're constrained by volunteer resources. So reach out if you're interested in getting involved, and you don't have to be the world's #1 expert on anything. All levels of experience can contribute to this. So that's the Education Committee report.
Thanks, Eric. So as you noticed, those of you who are listening, we have a lot of great stuff going on, and this is just sort of a side note. Look for where you could fit in. So we've got a lot of programs, a lot of exciting things to do. Really, the missing component is you. So see where you fit into these opportunities for you. Next, we have the Research Committee with Nathaniel Jones. Nathaniel?
All right, thanks, Mike. And again, thanks everyone for joining us today. The Research Committee is, I think, one of the older committees that has been continuously active. We've been going on for almost 7 years at this point. And we're made up of researchers, practitioners. At the moment, we're a little light on the academic side, so we're also certainly welcoming anyone from academia who wants to participate. About 5 years ago, we held a focus group, and we discovered that we were looking for what were the gaps in research and what areas could IBPSA help to fill in and provide more value to our members. And the area that just kept coming up over and over again was that there's a gap between researchers and practitioners, and it takes a long time for new products of research to make it into the market. And there's some feeling that sometimes people who are doing research don't really know what they can do to help advance building performance simulation. And so that's the gap that we try to fill in. So next slide, please. So here are a few of our the activities we've done that you might be familiar with. Project Stasio, the standardized simulation input and output, is a project that started in our committee and grew into its own thing. So we consider it to be a graduate of the research committee. And maybe some of you have participated in it by uploading some of your own examples of visualization of different simulation inputs and outputs, which is a way that we can help to grow our field by seeing what the really good examples of communication of building simulation tools are. And if there's something that you've really enjoyed that's come from our committee, I welcome you to put into the chat what it is that you've enjoyed using or what you've really found valuable. We've been working for the last 2 years on the Ask a Modeler column, which is one of the most popular features of the monthly newsletter, which might just go straight to your junk mailbox. But if you take a minute to look at it, we really try to find a mixture of emerging and really professional voices from the community, and ask them interesting questions that provide value to all of us to share that information. And we also run a monthly webinar series, which is free to all of our members. And so we really like to have people join us, ask questions directly to to people who are doing very relevant research in building simulation. Next slide, please. So people want to know how to get involved in the research committee. And the way that you get involved in the research committee is by joining one of our subcommittees. And at the moment, we have 3 subcommittees, which are architectural simulations, emerging simulation technology, and urban scale simulation. And each of these is kind of focused on a specific area or a set of areas that affect new work going on in building simulation. So architectural simulations is sort of a catch-all, particularly focusing on areas that tend to be underserved. So we have a lot of energy modelers here, but architectural simulations also asks how we can bring in other things like indoor air, lighting, acoustics, moisture, fire, occupant movement, and other factors that we can introduce building simulation into in order to help us design a better built environment. Emerging simulation is looking at identifying and promoting new tools and new ideas that can hopefully affect and change the way that we do building simulation. It really focuses a lot on outreach and how we communicate these new ideas out to our profession. And urban scale simulation is one that it has done a lot with webinars in the past. We're really trying to get it back off the ground now. So we certainly want people who are interested in this, how we look at simulation beyond the building and how we simulate entire communities and cities. Next slide, please. There are all sorts of things that we want to do in order to communicate what's going on in research out to practitioners and professionals and build more bridges between researchers and practitioners. So we're looking for people who can help us with webinars, with live or at the moment Zoom events, with workshops, with developing new standards or documents that can help us to popularize new ideas. And then, ways that we can reach out to people through newsletter communication and through hackathons, podcasts, and other ways of reaching, the public. All of our subcommittees and our committee meet monthly for 1 hour a month. We really want, if you want to be involved, we hope you can put in 2 hours a month. So come to a meeting and then also do something outside of the meeting. And so if you're interested in getting involved, our email research@IBPSA-USA is there. There's also a Google form and that you can use to fill out your interests and let us know areas where we can grow and how we can help to get you involved. All right, thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nathaniel. Next, we have Sagar Rao with Building Data Exchange. Sagar?
Thanks, Mike. Hello, my name is Sagar Rao, and I chair IBPSA's Building Data Exchange Committee. I'm here to provide a brief introduction, of course, to the committee, but also provide an overview of the concept of consensus documents that we've been working on, specifically in the context of data modeling standardization. Next slide, please. So first up, motivation. Obviously, some of us got together a year and a half, 2 years ago on the sidelines of ASHRAE conferences to specifically discuss the lack of a widely adopted data modeling framework that facilitates both inter-organization as well as inter-organization collaboration, or just interoperability for that matter between tools and workflows. And obviously, you know, if you're an architect, engineer, energy modeler, or even an authority having jurisdiction, you're well aware that it's a fairly expensive deficiency in the overall infrastructure that's available to us as energy modelers. So the other aspect of how the committee came about was, in addition to some of these deficiencies, there's also the fact that the typical standards route can take a while for publication. We see that on average, an ASHRAE publication takes about 6 years, and this includes guides and the like. And so given the technology aspect of things, as far as data and data exchange is concerned, specifically for design and simulation, it made sense for us to also look at other existing mechanisms to derive consensus, but also then take the consensus to a logical conclusion and then publish a document that's somewhat ANSI light, which is a certain framework that's available for the development of standards that doesn't necessarily cut any, that's as rigorous as most standards are, but does allow us to be more nimble and agile. And you know, that would help us improve the value proposition for BPM, building performance modeling in general, facilitate deeper, broader collaboration, and then also lay the foundation for the next generation of tools that are being developed that tend to be more web-based, incorporate databases or central repositories, and so on. Next slide, please. So our mission at the moment is twofold. One, obviously, there's the agile tool-agnostic data exchange standardization for design analysis and operational data through the publication of, as I mentioned, consensus documents. And the second is participation in related industry forums to encourage open information sharing in the development of pertinent data infrastructure for buildings. We were formally constituted in March 2020, so just about a year ago. And we do have a title, purpose, and scope set up. And in the following slides, once I get to the working groups, you'll see that we're organized into working groups, and each of them also have their own title, purpose, and scope. Next slide, please. In terms of participation, adoption was key, and we've been looking at, as I mentioned, other models that exist in other industries as well. One of them obviously was W3C, and we've tried to include stakeholders who in some sense are a representation of market realities for our industry. And as you can see, it's fairly broad-based as well. We've identified members into what we call interest categories, and each of those interest categories has a certain board-approved representation in the committee. So by no means is this a full list, but this does represent the voting members, the current voting members on the BDE committee. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned earlier, in terms of getting involved with BDE, we're currently organized into the 4 working groups that you see on the slide there. There is education and outreach, which is specifically working on conducting surveys and market research that informs the development and overall focus areas for the other committees or working groups within BDE. There's data modeling, which is in fact been doing some phenomenal work the past year or so. It's led by Anna and also Neil Cruz and Tim and some of the others who've made tremendous contributions to one of our consensus documents that will be available for public review later this year and hopefully in the summer. There's also in climate information, which is led by Parag Rastogi, and he's been doing a great job of not just keeping the consensus document moving along and developing consensus, but also bringing to the table different subject matter experts who understand climate information fairly well. And it's been, some of those conversations have been very enlightening and educational. And then there's also compliance and certification reporting. So if you're a practitioner, or an AG, you clearly know that there are deficiencies where, again, there's a fair amount of remapping of data or just manual entry and so on, which is fairly inefficient. And our hope with this working group is to get to a point where we have a consensus-driven schema for the representation of inputs and outputs from simulation tools to help with more automation and potentially taking some of the more laborious and burdensome pieces of the overall workflow. Next slide, please. And if you're looking to get involved, here's our contact information. There's the BDE website, also bde@ibpsa.us. You can reach us through that email address. There's also a GitHub repo that's being maintained by one of us, and there's also an MS Teams, although not as used as some of the other channels that are available for communication. But that's also another means for us to meet internally, and also for some of you to reach out to us. And if you'd like to get involved, please email us and we'll get you added to one of these media that's available to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sagar. Next, we have the California Advocacy Committee and Greg Collins. Greg?
Thanks, Mike. Hello, everybody. Greg Collins with Zero Envy. Next slide, please, Mike. We're a very new committee. So we just got approved by the IBPSA board last month, and haven't had any official meetings, but are kind of gathering some momentum. And the original kind of impetus for this group was those of us that have been involved with, in California, in this thing called CalBEM for a few years, have realized that practitioners are really underrepresented in that, that kind of line of events, and just generally codes and standards development in California. And so, we wanted to use IBPSA and the great people that are members and try to, improve that. And so the vision, just high level, is to develop that channel of communication. So we want to be, gathering feedback and understanding what our members want in California, and then also be kind of in the know of things that are happening on the standards and development side, so that we can kind of provide that as some kind of news or newsletter back to the members. Next slide, please, Mike. And so we're not actually doing anything quite yet, but the goals are first to recruit committee members. So this event was very timely for our committee. There is a link and a QR code on the next slide if you're interested. So we'd love to hear from you. We also are planning to promote the committee and establish an email list. So if maybe you're not interested in being an active kind of monthly participant, a couple hours a month, something like that, but you're interested in kind of following along, then I would love to hear from you and provide a mechanism for doing that as well. And so CalBEM is it's kind of an annual event that has probably quarterly or periodic touch points in 3 working groups. So we want to provide coverage from our committee members on all of those events so that we're kind of in the loop with all the conversations happening, and so we can report out to the followers. And then, that's the next point, is to just do that reporting out. And then I think those are kind of the initial steps just to get these balls rolling. But then we really want to develop a platform for advocacy. So we know the general goal is that compliance in California has gotten a lot more difficult in the past few years, and we really want to push for streamlining that, so that compliance, like a lot of IBPSA members, we feel kind of use energy compliance fits within your typical design or high performance energy modeling workflow. And so we want to kind of make that work a little bit better, a little more streamlined. Next slide, Mike. Yeah, so if that sounds good, if you want to follow along, or if you're interested in joining, click the link, take a picture of the QR code. It'll take you to a survey. If you just want to follow along, just put your email address in and skip the non-required inputs. But yeah, if you're interested in joining us, we'd love to have you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
All right, next, Supriya Goel with the Certification Committee. Supriya?
Yes. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this discussion. The Certification Committee, Mike, next slide, please.
Mike, I think this is me up for the Certification Committee.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Slid this one in the last minute. So sorry, Supriya.
No, it's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
This is another brand new committee, and I'm pretty sure Greg copied my new badge on his slide, but it's all good. We're all friends here. But let me describe a scenario to you and why this certification committee is being formed. This is brand new. We haven't even put out a call for membership yet, but please keep an eye out for upcoming newsletters when we officially get this committee started. The goal of this committee is to basically try to expand the opportunities to use BEM for code compliance or beyond code programs, but do so in a way where we're actually enhancing the quality of the models, the model reviews, and helping to build up the required skill sets of the modelers themselves. Many of you may have faced a scenario where you're working on a design project in a city where you don't have much experience, and you find yourself asking the questions, can I use an energy model to show code compliance? Is that allowed here? If so, are there any special rules that I need to be aware of? Maybe you've kind of gone through the process of building your model, and when it comes time for the review, you find that the reviewers may have less experience with modeling and the performance codes than you, the modeler, do. So there's a number of issues, and as a result, the landscape of compliance modeling across the country is very fragmented. So there's always a learning curve when you start to work in new places. We're trying to remove some of the barriers by putting some standardized processes in place, putting some tools together that jurisdictions can adopt in a uniform manner, or if they want to customize them, they have a really strong starting point. So next slide, please. So there's really 3 areas that we're tackling here. One is software certification. We want to make it clear how software vendors can have their tools approved for use in code compliance in different locations around the country. As you can see here, we've listed a number of activities, many of which we've already talked about here during this webinar, but there's a lot of great activity going on right now to try to standardize models and enhance model quality. There's a number of enhancements underway right now to put kind of pass-fail criteria around the ASHRAE standard 140 tests. There's an ASHRAE standard committee geared around making the rules for compliance well-defined and making the process of certifying tools that implement those rules more uniform. So we want to leverage all of these great activities to the extent possible in the software certification process. Next slide. We are looking into whether it makes sense to require modelers themselves to be certified, either by taking the BEMP exam or something similar that checks the boxes and validates that modelers understand what they need to know to create high quality code compliance models. Next slide. And finally, potentially a model reviewer certification. If you work for the authority having jurisdiction, do you understand what you need to know about the performance codes, about how models are created to properly review it and verify that the model represents the design effectively? So, these are the kind of 3 areas that we're looking into, but this is a brand new committee. So we would love to have representation from these 3 groups: model reviewers, software developers, and modelers, to help us understand what your issues are, bring them to the table so that we can come up with a process that works for all the stakeholders. Next slide. Yeah, there you go. That's what I just said. So, we'll be getting a call for membership out very soon. This is brand new. If you're interested in getting involved in a committee on the very ground floor and helping to make these decisions with us, we'd love to have you. So thank you.
Thanks, Dimitri. And now with the conferences committee, Supriya Goel.
Perfect. Thank you. And next slide. So with the conference committee, our main objective is to oversee and execute the IBPSA-USA conferences and other meetings. So as most of us know, IBPSA-USA, we organize a conference every 2 years, which is called the Building Performance Analysis Conference and Symbol. That's a joint conference with ASHRAE. And at the same time, we also want to identify opportunities for other joint conferences and specialty conferences that could be organized by us, or we could have sponsored sessions in that would give opportunities for our membership to potentially present on certain ideas or talk about certain things. And we also want to promote regional or single topic meetings. So potentially help chapter committees or even the research committee identify topics of interest and organize conferences on that, on those very topics. Next slide, please. So the activities, so the conference committee had a brief hiatus for a bit, and we've reconvened now. We had just one meeting a week ago where we identified our objectives and our goals and a few things that we could immediately start working on. So at a certain point before we went on our brief hiatus, we had identified a regional conference in either Chicago or San Francisco as something that we would look into. And those plans got postponed for a bit, as most plans have the last year. But we want to come back to that, start looking into the potential of doing something like that, and also start identifying other conferences which are going on that are simulation related, that IBPSA-USA could sponsor sessions at, and also potentially give an opportunity for other activities that are being done at these different committees to have those sessions at these conferences. We're a smaller, some of the administrative things that this committee would be involved with would be MOU with ASHRAE for the joint conferences that we have with them. And we also want to set up a repository on the IBPSA-USA website where all the conferences related to our field, building simulation and analysis, can be listed. And that gives our membership a place to go to find out which conference they could become a part of. And again, we'll also start looking into the potential of working with the chapters committee and the other committees within our organization to organize small topic conferences. So these are just some things that we're talking about right now, and nothing has been currently identified as a next step. We're just getting started. So if you have ideas, this is a great time for you to get involved. Our membership is also still evolving. We're still looking for a vice chair and potential members. So if you have interest in being part of an conference organization committee, you have some ideas that could potentially be good topics for a specialty conference, then you should definitely reach out to us. Next slide, please. So yeah, so just think of ways in which you could be a part of this committee. You could help organize conferences, mini workshops, and other ideas that could help this committee grow. If you're interested, you can directly contact me. That's my email address over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Supriya.
Yep.
So I will leave it open for any questions or clarifications. We're done with the presentation part. One thing I do want to note is, as you can see, there's lots of opportunity. So please don't hesitate to, one, investigate getting involved. One of the great things to offer here is all of these committees, meetings, et cetera, are all public, meaning that for the most part, other than I believe BDE, where you need to register to be part of it, all of them are eager to have you just come in, take a peek, sit down with, on any Zoom call at this point, and see what it's all about. This is a really easy way to investigate if there's a good match for you, and to really make a difference in our community. If we do have questions, you can put them in the chat, or raise your hand and we'll call on you. Also, any of the committee people that spoke, if you have clarification, please jump in now. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any questions, so either our presenters did a fantastic job.
Well, this is Eric Calderup. I have a question. I'd like to know which is the best committee. I was wondering who is. Can anyone answer that?
I think conferences would be the best one. We're still getting started, so anything you want, we could potentially take up. Right. Let's think of it from this perspective. Most of us have very limited time availability. So we want to work on something that aligns with our interests, and also something that's not going to take away too much time from our paying jobs. So one thing you can think of, if you're trying to identify what you want to work on, just think of everything that we've spoken about, which of that sounds most interesting to you. And then each of us could actually just go through and give you a sense of how much time commitment each of these committees might potentially take from you. And then you can take a call on whether this is something that you could do currently with your other commitments. So I can potentially start, and then Mike, maybe you could call on each of the committees and they can give a sense of their frequency of meetings, how much time they expect each person to potentially put in, depending on what kind of activity they need help for. So does that sound helpful?
I would say it would. One quick question here from Alfred, which is the chapters committee. Is there also been discussions about a student chapter?
I can take that one. Yes, there have indeed been discussions about supporting, creating, and maintaining student chapters. So that is definitely something on our list that is a priority. And if you would like to help out more or contribute at any level, yeah, please contact chapters at IBPSA-USA.
So I have a question. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add to that. This is Anna. If it's helpful, that we do already have one, maybe two student chapters. So there is some precedent for like other chapters having other student chapters that have been operating. And but yeah, just as Matt said, if you're interested in helping us develop more student chapters or look for more opportunities or develop standards, that would be great. Thanks.
I also did just drop into the chat the link to our calendar. Right now it's called the Zoom calendar because everything's on Zoom, but that's another way to just browse through the calendar and see when these meetings are and how long they last. my strongest recommendation is if you have any interest in any of these committees, just reach out to them. We'll be sending everybody a sort of a cheat sheet registration, or to click on when you get it. It'll go to everybody that was registered here, and that will also give you some information in regard to what your time commitment might be, and why people that are on the committee, how much they're enjoying it and what's involved.
Mike, I don't see that link. Did you send it?
Oh, you know what?
Mike, I think you were responding to me, so it only went to me.
Oh, there you go. Now it's there. Thank you.
So guys, this is Rajat. I have a question for research committee. So as Nathaniel mentioned, there are a couple of ongoing projects. So do you have any other projects in pipeline that you are planning to work on?
Yes, we do have some projects that are in pipeline. So some things that we're considering are hackathon events, and also what we're sort of calling happy hour events, essentially ways to get people together on Zoom from all different parts of the IBPSA-USA, all of our local chapters, and get people to talk about topics in sort of an unstructured way, like a programmer's happy hour, a lighting happy hour, that sort of thing. All these things are very much up to the interests of the people who get involved, and we're always looking for new ideas to foster that kind of involvement.
So the opportunity is only for administrative work or for the research work too?
So it's primarily administrative in that it's finding ways to bring researchers together. So we're not funded to perform research. We can help people connect with funding, but we ourselves are not a funding organization, so we don't provide that funding for people to do research work.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to add to that a little bit. So yeah, the IBPSA-USA doesn't fund researchers to do research work, and but there, like with Project Stasio, we started off as an unfunded project, and we operated as an unfunded project for almost 3 years. And it was when we had a minimal viable product, as we like to call it, that's when we went to DOE, and since then we've had funding for this project. So I would say funding should not be something that is a deterrent to people. If you have a good idea, then you should always go to the research committee, become a part of that committee. The research committee will help you groom that idea. The board will then can formally approve it, and we can work. You will have to put in some volunteer hours, but once in a good place, it's in a good place. There's always this potential of it getting funded in the future.
Yeah. And we're very thankful to Supriya and very proud of Project Stasio as our first graduate from our committee.
Well, this is Eric Coldup. I just like to put in a pitch for participating in a committee. I mean, I'm sure lots of you participate in other sort of outside of direct work activities, but I came fairly late in my career to like participating in ASHRAE, in IBPSA, at with some commitment. I felt like I was too busy in the earlier part of my career to take the time to go to the meetings and participate in the committees, and I think that was a missed opportunity. You develop a nice network, and I found that like almost all the people in IBPSA are like really nice, intelligent people, and so if nothing else, you're forming social connections, but also professional networking connections. So I think you get a return on that investment, even if it does take up a few of your evenings here and there. So I encourage especially the younger folks to consider making that time.
Who made you hesitate, Eric? Almost everyone.
Yeah, they're not part of this meeting today.
To add on to what Eric is saying, you may find yourselves in a conference, presentation, or webinar where the presenter is talking about something they're doing in the, say, code compliance world or a research project. And you may think to yourself, well, why didn't you do this? Or like, why is it like that? Or I wish it was like this instead. Well, these committees give you the opportunity to help form new processes, new procedures that, take your feedback as a practitioner into play so that it makes your job easier, it makes your life easier, it makes things make more sense. So, a lot of these committees are new, just getting off the ground. So, your input now will help form new processes that'll be in place, for years to come. So definitely take this opportunity, join us, and, we can do some great things together.
Okay. If we don't have any other questions, we've got a couple minutes left if we do. But otherwise, it's always nice to give back a few minutes when people come to a meeting like this. So thank you so much for your participation. I'm also speaking to the people who are watching this on a video, which we'll be posting in the next 24 hours. Again, don't hesitate. And my last note is we haven't talked about this yet, but the JEDI committee, which is in the background being developed, it's not an official committee yet, but I wanted to use it as an example of a lot of people are really concerned about justice, equality, diversity, integration, everything. So this is a committee that's floating around the background. It's one of those ideas of how we can, move forward as a group here in IBPSA, not only in the scientific community and pushing the industry, but social, as well as climate change and anything that affects your life. Anyhow, once again, Mike Wilson, IBPSA Executive Director, thanks you for attending today, and we look forward to hearing from you and participating with you across our universe of committees. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye now.
Thank you.